Hi, I'm Adrian Pappas from AucseearSDcqc Biosciences, and today I'm going to show you how to set up a successful cellular QC experiment on our iCelligence system. So the first step, and this applies to all our assays run on the iCelligence, is to set up the iPad connection to your iCelligence station. So here, we have the iCelligence station already pre-incubated at incubator conditions, 37 degrees C and 5% CO2. And as you can see, as indicated by the orange light on this unit, it's currently in standby mode. And the second component of iCelligence is the iPad, which controls the unit. And so as I mentioned, the first step is to set up the connection between the iPad and the unit. So in order to do that, we go into Settings. Under Wi-Fi Connection, we'll connect to the correct station. And in this case, if you just so happen to be running multiple iCelligence units, the correct unit will be indicated by the Wi-Fi alias, and the serial number will be located on it. So in our case, it's this third station. So now we're connected. We can start the software, and immediately you're prompted to log in. So in our case, we can just log in as user 1. We'll click New Experiment, and from here we'll choose the assay type which we would like to run. In our case, it's cellular QC. And we'll run a standard protocol. Now here are the steps. We can check to make sure that they apply to our assay. So the first step is always the background measurement. This background measurement will be used as sort of your baseline or origin in which your subsequent cell index measurements will be measured in relation to. After that, we'll have a 2-hour initial seeding interval at 1 minute readings. And so this will just measure the initial adhering and attaching of the cells to the bottom of the substrate. And then that step will automatically be followed by 96 hours monitoring at 1-hour intervals, just to get an idea of the overall long-term proliferation. So here, we can edit the layout of our experiment and add the necessary information in regards to your experiment. So in our case, we will be seeding HeLa cells at your appropriate density. And all of this information can be modified and or applied or modified or changed during the duration of your experiment. You don't have to enter it now. And since we'll be only using one plate, we can actually turn these wells off, and it'll prompt you to confirm that you actually do not want to use these wells. And as you can see, as indicated by the green button, we're ready to start our experiment. And so at this stage, we'll be putting the media inside of our plate for our first background measurement. So in order to set up your cellular QC experiment, the only reagents and materials that will be needed for your tissue culture are just very standard items. And so here we have our pipettes, we have the very standard tissue culture reagents, PBS, trypsin, as well as the full media for the cell type, which in our case is HeLa, and so we'll use the EMEM from ATCC, as well as just standard pipettes, pipette men as well for handling of the cells, as well as cell reservoirs. And so as I mentioned, the first step will be to acquire the background measurement. So in that case, we'll be adding 180 microliters of media to the bottom of the well. Now in general, we recommend going no lower or no less than 150 microliters for your background measurement. This is just to ensure that there is enough media in the wells to coat the entire bottom of the substrate. So I have here the full media. Now in general, the background media used for that measurement is just the same media as your cells. And so there won't be any difference between the background media as well as your plating media for your cells. So. Now, in the event that the media does not cover the entire bottom of the well, you can perform a visual inspection and simply tap the side of the plate just to make sure that the media spreads throughout the entire bottom. Okay, and we're ready to put this onto the station and record our first measurement. The green light indicates that the plate is in fact engaged and the station is ready. And then we go back to our software and we just click the start button and you're immediately prompted to name your experiment. And in this case, you can use the default name, which corresponds to a date as well as a serial number that's automatically generated. So in our case, we can use the default. And as you can see in the analysis page, our first time point has been taken. So now we've established our origin and we are ready to add our cells onto the plate. And so from here you can just take out the E plate from the station directly. So now I have my cells suspended in our desired media, their full growth media, and we have them suspended such that they're at a density that I'll be plating them at 300 microliters per well. And so in the 300 microliters I'll have my 15,000 cells. So now in general we recommend pipetting up and down very thoroughly to make sure you have a nice homogeneous cell suspension. This will help to minimize your CV between the wells as well as minimize the standard deviation and variability across your plate. Okay, as I mentioned, I'll be plating 300 microliters, so with the P200 I'll be plating 150 microliters twice. And that's it. So in general, we recommend incubating the cells at room temperature just like this underneath the hood for 30 minutes prior to putting it back into the incubator. And this is just to ensure that the cells settle nice and uniform on the bottom of the substrate to prevent any variation in the well itself. And so we'll let that sit for 30 minutes and then we'll be able to start our experiment and our monitoring. Now that the room temperature incubation is done, we're ready to put the plate onto the station and start the experiment. We go back to the software and we could simply click start. And there's our first measurement, or our second measurement, I'm sorry. And so from here, as I mentioned, we'll be recording at 1 minute intervals for 2 hours just to see the initial adhesion. And then after that, it'll automatically switch into 4 days monitoring at 1 hour intervals to get a nice proliferative curve. And that's Cell QC for you. So to recap the steps that we went through, we went over in general how to set up the iPad as well as the iCelligence unit, make sure that they're communicating to each other and communicating to the right station as well. We went over the background measurement and how to set up the software to get to that point, adding the media into the wells and then taking that first measurement. And then subsequently after that, we went over plating of the cells into the E-plate as well as waiting for the 30 minutes at room temperature before placing it back onto the station and starting your experiment. Tune into our other videos where I talk about the adhesion, proliferation, toxicity, as well as receptor signaling assays, and I'll walk you through those steps and how to set up those assays as well. I'm Adrian Pappas from AucseearSDcqc. Thank you for watching.